Hi, today I would like to talk about ego perks. Which ones are good, which ones are not so good, which ones people use that they probably shouldn't. And in an example of that latter category, let's talk about fortitude first. On the surface, this perk seems really good, and intuitively, you would think it's strong. But there's two problems with this. And cellular armor, everything I'm about to say about fortitude applies to this perk as well. So honestly, just copy paste this shit. Enemies in this game either don't do enough damage to ever sufficiently threaten to actually kill you, or they do so much damage that investing in defense becomes utterly pointless, like in high tier expeditions. So think about this. There is a perk for shields called booster shields, 10% max health. There is not a single person that actually values that or desires it or wants it. If 10% is not good enough to ever be ran on an item, 15% isn't really good enough to run as an ego perk, especially when you consider some of the other potential options that you could be running. For example, reviving the whole team for reviving one person. Just to give you an example of what an actually good defensive perk looks like, it just doesn't do enough. So, for example, if you have Siphon on a gun, this is 10% life and shield steal. Or if you have GA on a gun, this is also 10% life and shield steal. So, with a high capacity shield, even if the shield's not GA, just being an ironclad or a rhino shield, you get in the ballpark of 30 plus thousand shield capacity. You only have, it's like 12 or like 15k health or some ridiculously low number like that. So, amplifying it by 15% just doesn't really matter. And if, let's say, an enemy is only outputting like 5,000 damage to you every like 3 seconds, well, if you're doing if you're doing like 500,000 DPS, which is a lowball estimate, by the way, Siphon or GA single handedly overcome that. So unless you're getting one shot, you really shouldn't be dying at all. And that's really the biggest problem with Fortitude. Siphon and GA just utterly replace it. And if you're ever doing content where Siphon and GA aren't strong enough to overpower the enemy's incoming damage, then you're dying so quickly anyways that increasing your base health is not going to stop you from dying in like 0.1 seconds. Okay, now let's talk about some perks that are actually good. Anything that increases your ego power duration or reduces the delay on the recharge is just really good. Because let's be honest, 90% of people are either using overcharge. Very rarely will people use blur if they just need the speed to keep up. And in high tier expos, you'll see people use decoy specifically so they can just draw aggro away from bosses and stuff. In both instances, you want your power to be active as long as possible, and you want it to come back as quickly as possible so you can use it as much as possible. So, both of these perks should pretty much be used in every single build. This is a perk that I see a lot of people running, but it's just not that good. Nano effects have a higher chance to trigger on a critical hit. Okay, 6% nano effect chance. If I pull up the cyber rig here, this is not... No, I need to do this. Okay, thank you, game. You can get a single chip. These are like 7%. Or no, I'm sorry, these are 5%. A single, not even T5 chip on your rig is more than that perk is. And there's no activation condition. And you can have like 4 of those. So if you can outsource a perk to a single item that you can get multiple of, it's usually not worth it to run that perk. Because the opportunity cost of not running a stronger perk leads to an overall weaker build. For example, let's talk about the next perk, Killing Spree. And Killing Spree, everything I'm about to say to this applies to Explosive Onslaught as well. Killing Spree is one of the most busted perks in the game because it has no internal cooldown. Unlike some perks I could mention, this one, Pumped Up, this perk has no cooldown. So if you kill 5 guys with an explosive, you're just getting like 25% or whatever back off of this. And this stacks with Explosive Onslaught. So with these two perks, let's say you're using Overcharge and you have like 5 seconds left on your Overcharge, shooting one rocket with these two perks at like a horde of skitterlings, it will just straight up immediately refresh Overcharge back to full. That is, as you can imagine, pretty good. Escape Artist is really strong because at any level of content, this is incredibly useful. Let's say you're doing open world dailies and you just need to move from objective to objective faster. Then you just pop it yourself, and now you run now you run faster than someone with blur. Escape artist alone is 45%, blur is 50%. So if you get any other source of movement speed, you're running faster than blur while using another ego power. If you're doing content where you're really likely to die and things are really hard, then your shield will pop, and this lets you move to a better position where you won't die. So even if you're in one-shot territory, this lets you avoid the one shot. If you're in things are actually getting hard now territory, this lets you move away from the danger. And if you're in things are so easy, I just use Siphon and GA to ignore all forms of damage territory, then this just helps you do whatever grind you're working on faster. Hell, this is a good perk even in PvP as well. So it's one of those perks where it's really hard to not slot it in, but it's not really a super priority. Nerves of Steel and Gunslinger basically are exactly the same, just like Fortified and Cellular Armor. So, real quick about Nerves of Steel, I actually think Nerves of Steel is straight up better than Gunslinger because what counts as moving towards you is generous to say the least. Enemies strafing left and right, even if they're like vertical, like, or whatever axis position is getting further away from you, still counts as moving towards you for some reason. Anything other than an enemy straight up not moving or moving directly like 180 degrees away from you, anything other than that counts as moving towards you. Which basically means everything all the time, because how many enemies in this game just slow walk towards you while they shoot and or are just melee only and have no choice but to walk towards you? This perk is 90% of the time just free 15% crit damage. Gunslinger as well. If you're using a weapon that isn't a sniper and cares about crit, you can almost assuredly make it worth it to hip fire. So if you're doing content where you don't really have to risk dying, say you're nullifying all damage with GA or Siphon or God forbid both at the same time, then combining these two perks is just kind of 30% crit damage for free. Energy Leech is another perk that's broken for the same reason that Killing Spree is broken. You shoot one rocket into a room, you get 5 kills. This is 15% back on your overcharge or whatever you're using for free immediately. Super, super strong perk. Okay, I've got another row of perks to talk about here. Any perk like this is automatically bad. You take less damage from behind. Another one of these that I see used a lot that's really bad is stuff like this. You take less damage while crouched. Or something like this. You deal more critical damage while crouched. These 3 perks, and to a lesser extent single-minded, but I will talk about this one on its own in a second. These 3 perks, any perk that requires a condition to be met on you that affects your maneuverability, it is automatically bad. You will see people use especially this one a lot, but when do you ever seriously want to be sitting there crouched? If you're actually threatened by enemies potentially killing you, you never want to just stand still and let them hit you. And if you're doing content that's so easy where you're not threatened by that, 9% crit damage is like half of Nerves of Steel, so why would you use this over this? And 2, if you're doing easy content, you care about moving from objective to objective. This directly stops that. And for this, you can get 6% less damage for doing nothing, and you can throw like 3% on your rig for doing nothing. And standing still means you get hit more. Getting hit more nullifies the purpose of taking less damage in the first place. You end up taking more. Even if this was like you take 20% less damage, by virtue of standing still and letting enemies hit you more, you would end up getting hit more, which means you would take more total damage even if each individual hit is reduced because you're getting hit more. So it's just kind of a counterintuitive, not very good perk. Deadly Cascade. So I'm going to talk about all 3 of the explosive perks now. The reason why explosives are so good is twofold. 1, Purgatory and Mass Cannon have the highest 2 DPS values in the game. Before you consider Synergy, Nano, anything. If you just take a Nanoless MC in Purgatory and you just click mouse 1 at a target dummy, assuming there was one, it would give you the highest DPS readouts if this game had like a damage meter in it over every other weapon in the game. So even without these perks, explosives would already be the best weapons in the game for like single target damage and naturally for AoE as well. But then you consider this shit right here. Every enemy caught in the explosion takes 30% extra damage. So let's say you hit a target. Then you hit another target. Well, now you're doing 30% damage. And this is just most of the time. This is just like 30% free damage. I mean, like, you're already using the strongest weapons in the game that hit the most targets and hit each target harder than every other target. Now you're giving them just flat 30% more damage on most all of their attacks. Right here. On explosive weapon kill, instantly reload part of your weapon's clip. This is really nice, especially if you roll mag mastery on your weapons. If you're running like 20 mag purgatory or like 10 mag mass cannon, you're getting 2 to 4 shots back with this for every kill. But there is a problem with these two perks, and I want you to understand something about these two perks. Not reloading is not inherently a good thing. Pumped Up is one of the best perks in the game, but I'll talk about this in a second. But these perks are good, don't get it twisted. And most people will run these, but they're not like must-run perks. 30% chance on kill to instantly reload your weapon. This is more of a purgatory thing than a mass cannon thing, because mass cannons will pretty much always have 0.5 reload, which is literally blink and you'll miss it. So you don't particularly care too much about these two perks on them. This is more for purgatory, which has like 20 round mags and like a 3-second reload. And on that weapon, these two are insane. Okay, the next perk to talk about is One for All. 75 meters is huge. To try and give you an example, from here to like... Let me just put a map marker down real quick to give you an example of this. 75 meters is... This. So there is a bubble around you. From there, all of that, from like that stuff back there, there is a bubble of that much space around you where just everyone gets revived for a single revive token. This is a mandatory perk to run in expeditions, because even if everyone is down, you just revive one person in the room, everyone gets back up. Pumped Up. This perk is ludicrous. 15% ego power recharge on full reload. Okay, what does that look like? Okay, you just got 15% of your ego power back. And what does that look like on, say, a mass cannon, for example? Okay, you just got 15% of your magazine back. Or, I'm sorry, of your reload. Your ego power back. And then you consider that your ego power is 30% more damage. And for most people, 30% reload speed as well. Yeah, getting this back and keeping it up as long as possible is one of the biggest damage increases you can get. However, worth noting, this perk has an unlisted, like, 5-7 second cooldown. The cooldown is listed on this roll, which, by the way, this T4 roll is insane and clearly better than basically all the other ones. This is equivalent to one of the must-run perks that, like, everybody runs, just for free on your weapon. Speaking of overcharge, 30% reload speed. To put this into perspective for you, a T5 mag is 25% reload speed. So, like, for example, this Mass Blaster has a T5 reload mag, blue reload, and has 1.0 reload. If I pop overcharge, and we look now it's 0.5. So, something I'd like to point out is reload speed kind of scales when you stack it. So, even though this is 30% off the reload, it ended up actually equating to having my reload speed. That's why, unless your weapon just is like a mass cannon and it defaults to 0.5 reload speed, which is the cap, by the way, you can't go below that, every single weapon kind of just wants to run this. Because you're already running either a reload speed roll or a reload mag or something, which then stacks with this and has like this weird cascading effect. Scavenger is a specific perk, so you would only run these with like you know how you only really run this and like this with Purgatory, to a lesser extent mass cannons? You kind of have to run this with mass blasters, because they just chew through ammo so quickly that if you're not getting as much as possible, you'll have to be hitting the ammo box a lot. But this perk is very give or take. And then finally, Blast Shield. This perk is great because the most dangerous thing in the game is the Hellbug Hellion at the end of Expos or your own explosives. And this lowers the range of both of these. Oh, there's something else I want to talk about. There's a perk that I see people run all the time that is just not good. Where is it? Where is it? Where is it? It's self-medicated. So this perk, I believe people just don't understand how it actually works. So let me just down myself real quick. I'm going to make a standalone video for this, but just to showcase. All right, look at how much Survivor I get back. So people run that perk because they believe it works with Survivor Shield. Survivor Shield, if you don't know, is 20% self-revive on shield break. Well, if we look, we make that much progress. That is what 20% progress looks like. Okay? Now, if we... Here, I'll just show you this. So 1, 2, we're going to count the shield breaks. It's dawning on me there is a better way to show this. But whatever. We'll just do it this way since we're already committed. So we're 3 in. And I could really use an... We're 4 in. And you can see the 5th one is going to give us the proc. Now, let me throw on self-medicated. And I can show you that it doesn't affect this at all. And you can see that I make the exact same progress. See? That exact same sliver of progress as before. Self-medicated doesn't work with the primary source of actually getting your self-revive back. So this perk is just really hard to consider running. So 2 other perks I want to talk about real quick. This doesn't work. This perk only works when you slightly stagger enemies. Let me find someone to shoot just one time real quick. So let me just show you this. This guy takes 9,600 damage. Now, if we throw this on, and we use, say, a flashbang, so this is true for the stun, because this is literally just electric, we do 9,600 damage as well. The only time this perk works is, like, when you stumble an enemy like this. Now I do 21,000. So, yeah, unless you're, like, doing a melee shotgun thing for, like, PvP, this perk is completely useless. I would also like to talk about height advantage. I've given this perk its own video, but basically anything that, even if you're 1 pixel above an enemy and you jump, this activates. I would also like to talk about single-minded. This perk will activate as long as you stop moving for 1 frame. So if you just shoot and then you just stop moving, hit reload, and go back, it's just a 330% reload. So this is really good as well. I would also like to talk about cellular armor. 6% is pretty terrible. You can get 10% from GA, and that's really not considered very great. And you can get, I don't have it, and my rig doesn't have a defensive slot, but you can get 3% from damage diffusers on your rig. And while those are good, a lot of people prefer to run explosive dampeners anyway. That's pretty much it for most perks. Hopefully this gives you the knowledge to understand what makes a perk good and when you should run it. Alright, see you later.